Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It started with a single wet footprint, bare, small, and headed straight for the house. No signs of a break-in, no stolen property. Just a silent intruder treating our private pool like a resort. By the time we found out who it was, the fight for our land had already begun. It started with a puddle. I stepped outside that Monday morning to check on the pool after a quiet weekend. The sun was barely up, painting the red rock hills around our ranch in gold, and the desert air was still cool enough to be pleasant. But right there, on the slate tile near the deep end, was a wet footprint. Barefoot, small, narrow, and pointed toward the house. I paused. No one had used the pool since Saturday, and even then it had just been me, skimming leaves and testing the chlorine. I checked the gate. Still locked. The keypad on the back gate flashed red, untouched since I'd last punched in the code. So I told myself maybe it was condensation. Desert nights got cold. Maybe it was runoff from the pool heater, right? Except then I found a crumpled juice bottle on the lounge chair, one of those off-brand lemonades with a label I'd never buy. Next to it, a folded towel, not one of ours. I blinked. I didn't have kids. Neither did my grandparents. And no one had visited us in weeks. I chalked it up to something weird. Maybe my buddy Jace stopped by and didn't text. I sent him a message. He said he hadn't been out to the ranch in over a month. The next day, I found the pool net out of its holder, soaked and leaning against the patio like someone had actually used it. The skimmer basket was full of fresh debris, but the surrounding trees hadn't dropped much overnight. Someone had cleaned the pool. Not me. I changed the keypad code just in case. Then I called my grandpa, Henry, to ask if maybe he or Grandma had invited someone over while I was at the hardware store on Sunday. Invite someone to swim in our pool without telling you? He barked over the line. Kyle, we don't even invite people for coffee. That was true. My grandparents weren't exactly the come-on over types, especially not since Henry's hearing got bad and he started carrying a shotgun around just in case someone forgot. They weren't welcome. That night, I walked the perimeter. The motion lights didn't trigger, and the fence, 6 feet of solid wood reinforced with steel post anchors, was intact. But when I got to the side gate that led out toward the back trail, I noticed something off. The padlock looked scraped, like someone had twisted something metal into it. The shackle was still intact, but the metal around it had scratches I definitely hadn't made. My stomach turned. I set up an outdoor trail camera the next day, infrared, motion activated, discreet. Mounted it inside the wind chime housing above the gate. If someone was getting in, I was going to catch them. By Thursday, I had 2 more towels, a different half-empty water bottle, and an empty chip bag wedged under the bench near the pool pump. The pump timer had been messed with too. Someone tried to set it to manual and likely didn't know what they were doing. I felt like I was going crazy. Nothing was stolen. The garage was untouched. But someones were using my family's private pool like it was their resort. Friday morning, I checked the camera footage, and I nearly crushed my coffee mug in my hand. There she was, Karen Landon, HOA president of Silver Palms. I recognized her immediately from the time she handed me a passive-aggressive flyer about community landscaping norms after I moved back in. I wasn't part of their HOA, but that had never stopped her from behaving like I was. She strutted through the now broken gate like it was her own spa. With her were 2 other women in wide-brimmed hats, pool bags over their shoulders, and, what the actual hell, 3 teenagers in swimsuits following behind. They laid out towels, helped themselves to the chairs. One teen climbed onto the diving board and did a cannonball. I stared at the screen in disbelief as Karen, draped in a floral robe and sunglasses, sat down on one of my lounge chairs, took a selfie, and sipped from a straw. She leaned over to one of her friends and said, clearly audible right into my camera mic, "Nobody uses this pool anyway. It's just sitting here. Honestly, we're doing them a favor, keeping it clean." That's when the laughter started. Their laughter, not mine. I rewound the clip, watched her again, watched how she used a twisted screwdriver to pop the side of the padlock loose, how she let the gate bang open without a care, how she made herself perfectly at home. And I didn't laugh. I saved the footage to a USB drive and slid it into my pocket. Then I walked out to the barn where my grandfather was tightening a bolt on the old tractor engine and said, "Hey, Grandpa, you're not going to believe this. Someone broke into our backyard. You want to see who?" He didn't even look up. Was it that damn woman with the HOA haircut? I blinked. You know? He finally looked at me, face like a canyon wall. I saw her SUV parked up near the wash trail last week. Figured she was up to something. Should have said something then. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Henry didn't blink once during the whole thing. When it ended, he set down his wrench, stood up slowly, and walked toward the gun safe. "You work tomorrow?" he asked. "Yeah, till 3. He picked up the Remington, checked the chamber, and said flatly, "Leave the gate unlocked." Saturday was dry and hot, even by Arizona standards. I had work in town wiring up a new panel in a rehabbed auto shop, and by the time I got home a little after 3, I was beat, sunburned across the back of my neck, and craving nothing more than a shower and a nap. But before I even made it to the front door, Grandpa met me on the porch. He had that look, stone-faced, jaw tight, eyes a little brighter than they should have been for a man his age. That meant something happened. "She came," he said, "just that. No names, no drama, but I knew exactly who." "When?" "Half-hour ago. Them kids too. I waited until they were in the pool. Then I let 'em have it." My heart jumped. "Wait, Grandpa, you didn't shoot, did you?" He narrowed his eyes. "What do you take me for? You think I'd waste buckshot on some bored yuppies and their brats?" I exhaled. "So, what did you do?" He pointed toward the backyard where the gate stood wide open. "Go look." The place looked like a war zone. One of the pool chairs was flipped over, towels were abandoned in a pile near the diving board, and a plastic cooler lay tipped on its side, leaking melted ice and cans of liqueur across the tile. I picked up a pair of sunglasses that had clearly been stepped on. A flip-flop floated slowly in the shallow end like a casualty of a tiny aquatic disaster. "You should have seen the look on her face," Grandpa said from behind me. "She screamed like I'd risen from the grave." He explained what happened like he was reading off a checklist. He'd sat out back for nearly an hour in the shade, Remington across his lap and cooler of Gatorade at his feet. Waited until they broke the lock again, which they did. Same damn gate, same screwdriver, and waltzed in like it was their private resort. They were halfway through settling in when he stood up, racked the shotgun for effect, and bellowed, "Stop right there!" Apparently, one of the kids screamed and ran straight into the hedge. A woman dropped her purse in the grass and tripped on her own towel. Karen, wrapped in her usual robe and sunglasses, did a full turn, locked eyes with him, and bolted. Didn't even wait for her sandals. Grandpa said she cursed at him on her way out. Something about lawsuits and psycho hillbillies with weapons. He just waved them off with the barrel pointed skyward. And this? I picked up a light pink gym bag lying near the garden trellis. One of her friends got stuck in the gate trying to run. Left that. Probably meant to come back for it. Shame. Inside the bag were keys, an iPhone, and a folded HOA brochure with Karen's name stamped on the back. Bingo. That's when we heard tires crunching on gravel. I turned to see a black and white SUV pulling into the driveway. Sheriff's Department. My stomach sank a little. I wasn't surprised, but I still wasn't thrilled. 2 officers stepped out. A younger guy, probably late 20s, and an older woman with sergeant stripes and mirrored sunglasses. They were calm, casual, no weapons drawn, but you could see the alertness in how they moved. "Afternoon," the sergeant said. "We got a call about a possible weapons threat. Karen Landon filed a report." Grandpa crossed his arms, Remington nowhere in sight. "And she mentioned she was trespassing when that happened." The sergeant glanced at her notes. "She says she was invited." I stepped forward. "You want to see the footage?" 10 minutes later, we were in my living room, laptop open, showing the full clip. Karen prying the gate, bringing her crew inside, laying out towels, then jolting like a feral cat. The second Grandpa stepped out with the shotgun. His posture, defensive, gun never raised, voice loud but not threatening. The kids were clearly on our property, clearly unauthorized. The younger deputy let out a low whistle. "She brought teenagers. And one of them knocked the solar light off the fence," I added. The sergeant leaned back. "Well, that complicates her story." "She said she had permission," I said. "From my dead uncle." The sergeant arched a brow. "You got any paperwork stating that?" "Sure don't," I said, "because it never happened." We gave our statements. Grandpa was solid, firm, but respectful. He told them he never pointed the weapon at anyone, never chambered around, just made noise to scare them off, which he did. Hell, even I wanted to run the way he told it. Before leaving, the sergeant said, "Just so you're aware, they might try to pursue this further. Technically, you didn't brandish the weapon, but she's using words like threat and emotional trauma. It's gonna go to paper." I nodded. As long as the footage goes too. As they drove off, Grandpa leaned against the porch railing and muttered, "Next time I'll wear my medal. Maybe then they'll believe me faster." I looked at the busted gate, the debris near the pool, the chaotic trail of people who thought they could just take what didn't belong to them, and realized this wasn't the end. Not even close. I thought maybe, just maybe, the scare with Grandpa would keep Karen away, but I should have known better. The kind of ego that lets someone break into your backyard 3 days in a row doesn't just slink away because a 78-year-old man yelled at them with a shotgun. No, the real storm was just getting started. It began with a knock on the door Monday morning. Not the police. A delivery. Certified mail. I signed without thinking, still sipping coffee in my flannel pants, and tore open the envelope on the porch. It was official, letterhead, legal formatting, all of it. A notification of pending civil litigation, filed by Karen Landon, representing herself, of course. The nature of the complaint? Reckless endangerment, verbal assault, emotional distress, and unlawful threat of deadly force. Below that, in italics, she'd added a handwritten note. "This behavior is unacceptable in our community." I laughed. Actually laughed, out loud. Our community. Lady, your HOA doesn't even extend to our property line, let alone over our 6 acres of privately deeded land. Still, the paper in my hand was real, and it meant we were now officially in a fight. I called our lawyer, well, technically my grandparents' lawyer, but she'd helped us with the estate a few years ago when my uncle passed. Her name was Allison Waite, and she had the energy of someone who drank espresso straight from the pot and smiled at subpoenas. I emailed her everything, the footage, the police incident number, copies of the gate repairs, screenshots of Karen's Facebook HOA group where she posted, and I quote, "I've found the perfect private spot just behind our fence, secluded, underused, and technically ours if you really think about it." Allison didn't even take an hour to reply. This woman is out of her damn mind. We're counterfiling. Don't talk to her. Don't engage. Document everything. So that's what I did. Tuesday morning, the gate was busted again. Not fully torn open, just jimmied enough that someone had clearly tried to get in. No towels this time, no teens. Just evidence that someone had wanted to. Then, Wednesday afternoon, a woman I didn't recognize knocked on our front door. She was dressed sharply, pencil skirt, flats, carrying a clipboard. I figured she was some kind of inspector, maybe utilities, until she said the words, "Hi, I'm here on behalf of Silver Palms HOA's Compliance and Mediation Board. We'd like to schedule a formal review regarding your pool." I blinked. "You... what?" She smiled like I'd asked what 2 + 2 was. "The HOA has received several concerns about the property's accessibility and potential shared use agreements." I just stared at her. "We're not in the HOA." She pulled a folded document from her clipboard. "According to records submitted by Mrs. Karen Landon, there is a standing verbal agreement allowing shared access to the pool area dating back to 2018. "That's a lie," I snapped. "And the guy she's claiming made that agreement, my uncle, is dead." She hesitated, then nodded. "We've made note of that, yes. However, the HOA is requesting temporary access while this matter is clarified. It would be better for everyone if we could find a solution outside of court." That's when Grandpa stepped out onto the porch behind me. "Ma'am, this isn't an HOA matter," he said. "This is a trespassing and fraud matter. You see that gate over there?" He pointed. "I fixed it 3 times, and I will not fix it a 4th. She glanced over her shoulder like she half expected to see Karen hiding in the bushes. Then she folded her clipboard and left without another word. That evening, we found flyers taped to every mailbox on our road, including ours. "Local family faces, backlash for blocking community pool access. Help us fight for fairness." Below was a blurred photo of our house from Google Maps with our pool circled in red. I ripped ours off and crumpled it, but my phone buzzed minutes later. A friend from town texted, "Hey man, is that real? You've got people trying to steal your pool." The next morning, Allison emailed me a screenshot from the HOA's Facebook group. Karen had posted a picture of the gate, our gate, which she somehow had a recent photo of, with the caption, "They've turned a community resource into a fortress. This isn't neighborly. This isn't what Silver Palm stands for." And under it, comments like, "Disgraceful. That man pointed a gun at teenagers. Is the sheriff doing nothing about this? We should organize a protest." Allison sent another message right after that. "We're filing for a protective order. Also, I want names of anyone else who's tried to enter. This has gone from civil dispute to coordinated harassment. She wasn't wrong. This wasn't just a rogue neighbor with bad boundaries anymore. Karen was rallying her entire HOA to treat our property like it was a shared park they'd just forgotten to claim. I looked out at the quiet desert behind the house. The sun was setting, everything peaceful and still, but I knew what was coming next. By Friday, I was done playing nice. The gate had been fixed, again, with steel-reinforced bolts and a brand-new padlock that could probably survive a small explosion. I installed 2 additional cameras facing both access points to the backyard and synced everything directly to a cloud server with motion alerts on my phone. Grandpa joked we were 1 drone away from becoming Fort Bennett. I wasn't in the mood to laugh. Then came the summons, delivered in person this time. A process server in a navy vest knocked just after breakfast and handed me a neatly clipped packet, smiling like he'd just dropped off a birthday card. Karen Landon v. Kyle Bennett et al. Filed in county court, full civil suit. She was suing us for emotional trauma, reputational damage, and threat to life. Her legal claim included a fabricated story about being aggressively confronted at gunpoint on what she referred to as HOA recognized access adjacent grounds. She actually used that phrase, access adjacent, whatever the hell that meant. And then came the kicker. Attached at the back of the complaint, stapled with a smug little cover sheet, was an alleged supporting document of informal agreement, typed in Comic Sans, God help me, and allegedly signed by my uncle in 2018. It stated that local HOA members may utilize the rear yard swimming facility during appropriate daylight hours, provided no damage or disruption is caused. I stood there, holding the paper like it was radioactive. The signature was laughably fake. My uncle had a unique way of crossing his T's. He always did them last, like a check mark. This one looked like a 3rd grader trying to forge a permission slip. I called Allison immediately. She didn't even let me finish. That document is a forgery, she said flatly. We're getting it analyzed. In the meantime, don't respond to Karen, don't post anything online, and keep that gate locked. But Karen wasn't finished. That same afternoon, 2 people showed up in the alley behind our property in lawn chairs, sipping iced tea and watching our backyard like it was the damn zoo. They said nothing, didn't move, didn't even blink when Grandpa walked out and stood 20 feet away in silence. They just sipped and stared. Later that evening, a neighbor down the hill, Mrs. Holloway, came by with banana bread and a sheepish look on her face. She said she wanted to apologize in advance because she'd been invited to speak as a witness in Karen's case. Apparently, Karen was going around the HOA claiming she'd been a lifelong friend of my uncle and that many residents had enjoyed access to the pool for years, unbothered and welcomed. Mrs. Holloway wasn't buying it, thankfully. Your uncle never let anyone near this place, she said. He once chased a dog off his lawn with a broom. And that pool. He made me sign a waiver just to sit near it during the 4th of July barbecue. We both laughed at that, but I knew the game Karen was playing, manufacturing legitimacy through sheer volume of lies. And if just one judge didn't pay attention or brushed off our evidence, we could get hit with damages over something she made up from thin air. Grandpa, for his part, was strangely calm. He cleaned his shotgun that evening while whistling an old Johnny Cash tune, muttering under his breath about how some people need fences, and some people need fences with barbed wire. Allison called that night. The forensic document expert had confirmed what we already knew. The signature on Karen's agreement didn't match my uncle's in any known database, bank records, DMV files, or old contracts. It's fake, she said, and provably so. That was good news, but then she added, bad news is she's retained legal counsel now. Some real estate attorney named Dwight Flannery. Probably her cousin or tennis partner, but he knows how to drag things out. I looked at the mess our life had become. The cameras, the emails, the flyers, the neighbor testimony. And now a full-blown civil suit backed by forged documents and amateur theatrics. And I realized something chilling. Karen hadn't just decided to use our pool. She'd decided she owned it. The day we officially filed our countersuit, it felt like something in the air had shifted. Maybe it was just the Arizona heat finally breaking, or maybe it was the quiet satisfaction of finally going on the offensive. Allison prepared everything, an airtight package of claims for trespassing, property damage, false allegations, and defamation. We even included a request for a protective order. Grandpa grunted in approval when I told him. "I've waited 78 years to sue a Karen," he muttered. "Didn't know it would be so satisfying." Still, Karen wasn't letting up. Her attorney, Dwight Flannery, filed a motion trying to dismiss our counterclaim, calling it a vindictive overreach by a territorial recluse and his emotionally unstable grandson. That part made Grandpa laugh out loud. But that was just the start of her next stunt. The very next day, I got a knock on the door from Officer Velasquez, the same officer from the earlier police visit. This time, she had backup. They said they were following up on multiple reports of animal neglect and weapons discharge on the property. "What the hell?" I asked, standing barefoot on my own porch. "Someone filed an anonymous complaint," she explained. "Claims you're keeping unregistered livestock and discharging firearms within city limits." I actually laughed. My grandfather owns one shotgun. It hasn't fired a round in 10 years. And the only animal we have is a turtle named Marbles who lives in a kiddie pool. They did a cursory walkthrough of the yard, checked the shed, and noted we had no livestock, no ammunition lying around, and no signs of recent gunfire. Officer Velasquez apologized and left, clearly annoyed she'd been sent out for a goose chase. But I knew who filed it. Karen was trying to bury us in paper cuts. Later that evening, I logged into the neighborhood HOA forum using a guest link a friendly neighbor had shared. Karen had made a public post titled "When Safety Comes First," where she implied our property was a local risk zone and referred to Grandpa as a hostile armed man with a known temper. It didn't stop there. She uploaded a blurry photo of our backyard from over the fence, taken without our permission, and claimed it proved community access had historical precedent. Several neighbors chimed in to support her, but others weren't having it. One woman wrote, "Karen, we've all lived here 10+ years. No one's ever used that pool. You're trying to turn your trespass into a timeshare." The next day, Allison filed an injunction demanding Karen remove all online references to our property and cease contact. Meanwhile, I got a message from an HOA board member, Mike Seaver, asking if we could talk privately. He came by that evening and sat awkwardly at our patio table. "Look, I don't want to be involved in all this," he said, fidgeting with his wedding ring. "But Karen's been saying the HOA has an informal easement agreement from before the land was resurveyed. She claims the pool used to be partially on HOA territory." I almost choked on my lemonade. "Mike, the pool's been in the same spot since 1972. "I know," he admitted. "But she's pushing the board to vote on an official claim for shared utility access. It's mostly nonsense, but if she gets a majority vote..." That night, Grandpa sat polishing Marbles' turtle shell with a toothbrush while I paced the living room like a man on trial. Karen wasn't just lying anymore. She was laying legal and administrative groundwork to steal our property one false narrative at a time. She was using HOA bureaucracy like a battering ram, and I knew that if we didn't move fast, she'd push someone gullible enough to file a real claim. The next morning, we called a local title attorney. It was time to go nuclear. We were getting the entire property history certified, notarized, and recorded with the county, every inch of it, back to my great-grandfather's original purchase. We weren't just going to defend our land. We were going to burn her lies down. 2 days after Mike's visit, a certified letter arrived from the Silver Palms HOA legal counsel. It was printed on thick, smug stationery and accused us of interfering with established communal access rights and endangering the safety of community members. The cherry on top, a thinly veiled threat. Failure to comply may result in community action and/or a motion to seize the disputed property line for shared amenity use. I read it 3 times, then handed it to Grandpa. He squinted at the letter for half a minute, then said calmly, "Let them try. I'll be waiting in my lawn chair." That afternoon, I met again with our attorney, Allison. She was already one step ahead. "We're filing a preemptive motion with the county to reaffirm your parcel boundaries and the exclusive use designation," she said. "We're also entering the police report and the pool footage into the court record. If they so much as breathe near that gate again, we'll file for a restraining order." But Karen wasn't done. That same evening, just after sunset, motion sensors tripped behind the house. Grandpa and I both heard it and rushed out. This time, it wasn't Karen herself. It was 2 teenagers, likely HOA residents, trying to climb the back fence. One was halfway over when Grandpa flipped on the floodlight and shouted, "Don't even think about it!" With that shotgun slung across his arm, they bolted so fast, one of them dropped a phone in the mulch. I picked it up, and of course, the lock screen was a photo of Karen with her dog. The next morning, Allison sent a cease and desist letter directly to the HOA board, citing harassment, unsafe incitement, and ongoing trespass attempts. We included a printed frame from the security footage with Karen's face clearly visible, taken during her first pool visit. Karen finally responded through her lawyer. She was dropping the civil suit, but filing a criminal complaint instead. According to the complaint, Grandpa had brandished a deadly weapon at unsupervised minors, and I had installed unlawful surveillance equipment. They alleged emotional trauma, cited an old Arizona statute about aggressive fencing near community borders, and even tried to argue that our motion sensor lights were weapons of intimidation. Allison actually laughed when she saw the paperwork, but we couldn't ignore it. We had to attend a hearing, criminal court this time. The tension in the air that week was thick. Grandpa took to sitting on the porch each evening with his shotgun across his knees, not loaded, just resting like a warning in wood and steel. Meanwhile, I doubled down on getting notarized surveys, expert affidavits, and neighbor witness statements. One retired couple from across the street agreed to testify that they'd seen Karen bragging to a group about finding a secret pool no one uses. The worst part? HOA members started sending anonymous notes, some supportive, others downright threatening. One read, "Give it up, cowboy. You're one vote away from being surrounded." Another was just a photo of our property with the word "shared" written across it in red Sharpie. This had gone way beyond poolside trespassing. Karen had weaponized the entire HOA structure to pressure us from all sides, legal, social, psychological. But what she didn't count on was how tight our case had become. We weren't just defending a pool anymore. We were building a record of a systematic harassment campaign, and soon a judge would get to see exactly who had been playing dirty all along. The day of the criminal court hearing felt like stepping into enemy territory. The courthouse in Cottonwood was about a 40-minute drive from our property, and Grandpa insisted on wearing his old Navy blazer, complete with his pins. "If they want to paint me as some unhinged hillbilly, they're in for a surprise," he said, tightening his bolo tie. Our attorney, Allison, had prepped us well. She'd already submitted the police report, the pool footage, the trespassing evidence, and the broken gate photos. The cherry on top was the HOA's own internal forum post, where Karen bragged about borrowing our pool. It wasn't private. It had been screen capped and reposted by a fed-up HOA member who was sick of Karen's drama. Still, I felt that usual churn in my stomach as we walked into the courtroom. Karen was already there, sitting primly in a pale pink blazer like she was attending a garden party. Her lawyer was a smug, balding man who kept giving Allison sneering looks like this was beneath him. When the judge entered, the courtroom fell silent. We pled not guilty to all charges, and the judge allowed opening statements. Karen's lawyer went first. He spun a tale about a group of misinformed community members who had unknowingly accessed a shared use buffer zone that, according to him, was never properly delineated on the deed. He described Grandpa as an aggressive elderly man with a military background and a penchant for firearms, and claimed Karen and the teens had suffered significant emotional trauma. Then it was Allison's turn. She stood calmly with that icy composure only real pros have. She presented the boundaries clearly, using the county assessor's map and GPS-verified surveys. She then introduced our footage. Karen's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. The footage is relevant, and it captures the alleged incident. On screen, Karen was shown entering through our back gate, lounging poolside, sipping a drink, and laughing with her friends. Then came the money shot. Her looking right at the camera and saying, "They don't use this pool anyway." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge blinked slowly. Karen's face froze. Then came the police body cam clip, showing Grandpa holding the shotgun, barrel pointed down, not even cocked, and calmly telling the group to leave. He never aimed, never yelled threats, just firm commands, like a veteran trained to de-escalate. Then, the final nail. A teen witness, called by the prosecution, admitted under oath that they had heard Karen say it was fine and thought she had permission. Allison turned that into a dagger. "Your Honor, the defendant never threatened these minors. They were misled by an adult who took liberties with someone else's land." and now she's trying to criminalize the rightful owner's response. The judge called a recess. Karen looked like she wanted to disappear into her purse. After lunch, the judge returned with a ruling. All charges dismissed. Furthermore, the court recognized the video and police report as credible evidence of illegal trespassing and misrepresentation. Karen's attempt to escalate the situation legally had completely backfired. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. The story had started circulating in local media after Karen's complaint went public. One camera crew caught Grandpa exiting the building and asked if he had anything to say. He looked straight into the camera and said, "She broke into our property, lied about it, and tried to play the victim. That don't fly where I come from." 2 days after the criminal case was dismissed, the fallout began to ripple across Silver Palm's HOA like a bad smell in a locked car. Karen, who had strutted around as if she owned not just the HOA but the entire zip code, was suddenly public enemy number one. The court ruling, complete with video footage and transcripts, made local news. A headline from the Sedona Tribune read, "HOA president caught trespassing, tries to sue veteran, fails spectacularly." But Karen wasn't just embarrassed. She was panicking. We learned from Allison that she'd filed a desperate motion to reconsider the evidence in the civil court that was still pending, trying to salvage some shred of control. But this time, the HOA board wasn't backing her. In fact, they were holding an emergency vote of no confidence. A man named Tom Finley, a retired real estate broker and HOA board member, reached out to us through Allison. He apologized for what he called a severe overreach by Karen and said the board had received multiple formal complaints from HOA residents over her abuse of power. According to him, Karen had bypassed several internal procedures, misrepresented authority, and encouraged community members to make use of adjacent properties without clearance. That night, I saw a convoy of cars pull up outside the HOA clubhouse. People were filing in, some with folders and papers in hand. Karen stormed in last, barking at someone and waving her phone. The next morning, I got a message from Tom. "She's out," it read. 80% vote. Interim leadership installed. We're issuing a public statement. Sure enough, by noon, the Silver Palms HOA homepage had a new banner. Leadership transition. As of today, Karen Landon is no longer affiliated with Silver Palms HOA. All inquiries or complaints may be directed to the interim board, and that wasn't the end. Allison filed a countersuit in small claims court for damages, the broken lock on our gate, repair to the fence section the teens had knocked down, and upgraded security installation. The total came out to nearly $23,000. We also included legal fees, another $15,000. Karen tried to settle privately, offering $5,000 if we'd drop everything and move on. We declined. During the hearing, Allison laid it all out in clean, devastating order. The pattern of trespassing, the false police complaint, the manipulation of HOA resources, the forged letter of permission, and the clear intent to bully us into submission. The judge awarded us the full amount, $38,000. But the real kicker? The court also granted a civil restraining order against Karen Landon, effective immediately. She was now legally barred from approaching within 500 feet of our property or initiating contact with any member of the Bennett family for 5 years. We added new cameras, a reinforced biometric lock, and motion detection floodlights wired to a direct alert system. And Grandpa had a sign made for the gate. Private property. Trespassers will be photographed, recorded, and laughed at in court. Word spread fast. Karen became a pariah in her own community. Rumor had it she tried to move to Phoenix, but no HOA would take her after they saw her name. And one evening, as Grandpa and I watched the sunset from the porch, he nudged me and grinned. "Think they'll try again?" I shook my head. "Not unless they bring a lawyer and a ladder." He laughed. "Even then, I've still got the shotgun." I thought things would quiet down after the court victories, but then came the wave of attention I hadn't asked for. The local newspaper ran a full spread titled, "Veteran and Grandson Stand Their Ground Against HOA Tyranny." It included a photo of Grandpa standing proudly by the gate, one hand on the new biometric lock, the other resting casually near his holstered revolver, a photo he very much posed for, despite claiming he hates attention. People from nearby, neighborhoods started reaching out. I got emails, social media messages, even handwritten letters from folks thanking us for fighting back. Some shared their own horror stories, HOAs fining them for the color of their curtains, trying to dictate how often they watered their lawns. even attempting to control guest parking on non-HOA land. One afternoon, a couple in their 60s knocked on our front door. They introduced themselves as Rob and Lydia Carmichael, owners of the lot just north of us. They'd been members of Silver Palm's HOA until Karen had fined them multiple times for decorative elements inconsistent with the visual harmony of the community, which meant Lydia's mosaic stepping stones. We voted her out, Rob said with a smile. But you two, you're the reason she stayed out. They gave us a bottle of wine and an old Polaroid of our property from the 90s, Grandpa's original pool layout before the HOA ever existed. Grandpa took the photo, stared at it in silence, then muttered, "Didn't need their permission then. Sure as hell don't need it now." But not everything was so warm and fuzzy. About a week later, someone spray-painted the words "Hillbillies with Guns" on the side of our mailbox. The sheriff's office came out, took photos, and said they'd increase patrols, but it didn't take long to guess who might have been behind it. Karen might have been banned, but she wasn't gone. We reviewed the security footage. A dark sedan with out-of-state plates had pulled up at 2:34 a.m. A figure jumped out, hoodie pulled low, and hit the box with 3 quick strokes of red paint before speeding off. We sent the footage to the sheriff. They couldn't confirm the identity, but they opened a report and logged it as harassment tied to our recent legal proceedings. Grandpa, ever the tactician, didn't flinch. He replaced the mailbox with a reinforced steel one, welded shut on 3 sides, and painted it blood red with gold letters. "The Bennetts. Trespassing ends here." The next morning, we found fresh tire tracks on the access road near the gate, like someone had driven up to get a look, then reversed in a hurry. Things simmered again after that, but the undercurrent of tension never fully left. Karen's supporters, or at least those who enjoyed her style of community leadership, clearly weren't thrilled she'd been dethroned. But for every passive-aggressive glance at the grocery store, there was also someone who nodded at me in quiet approval. The gas station clerk gave me a free coffee with a wink. The woman at the hardware store knocked 10% off my fencing materials. It felt like we weren't just defending our home. We'd become the unofficial face of something bigger. People were tired of being bullied, of fake authority, of people like Karen bending systems to their will and hiding behind bureaucracy when caught. I never planned on being that guy, but now that I wasn't backing down. 3 months later, peace finally started to feel real. Not the kind you pretend exists while looking over your shoulder. The kind where you can sit on the porch with a cold beer and not think about legal fees, locks, or courtrooms. The restraining order held strong. Karen hadn't dared come within a mile of our property since the judgment. According to Tom Finley, she sold her place in Silver Palms in a quiet, below-market deal, then vanished to Flagstaff. HOA records marked her as voluntarily removed. Yeah, right, Silver Palms itself had changed. Tom and a few others from the interim board pushed for new bylaws, ones that prevented any board member from acting unilaterally without community votes or written approval. There was even talk of dissolving the HOA entirely, but they settled on stripping most of its enforcement powers. As for Grandpa and me, we took the settlement money and reinvested it into the ranch. We built a covered patio near the pool, installed a new flagpole, and even bought a smoker setup for weekend cookouts. The place felt alive again. One Saturday afternoon, we had friends and neighbors over, folks from both inside and outside the HOA. People brought brisket, cornbread, drinks. Grandpa wore his old Navy cap and held court under the umbrella like a local legend. At some point, a teenager approached and shyly asked if he could see the shotgun. Grandpa looked at me, then cracked a grin. "Only if your parents are cool with it, and only if you promise not to trespass to get another look." Laughter all around. The kid nodded solemnly. The fear, the courtrooms, the early morning knocks, they started to feel like another life, not forgotten, but no longer looming. A week later, we got a certified letter in the mail from the Arizona State Bar Association. Inside was a formal complaint against a lawyer named Meredith Keys, Karen's attorney during her doomed lawsuit. Apparently, she'd falsified information in the civil suit and attempted to submit fabricated statements as part of the discovery phase. We weren't the only victims. 2 other homeowners had submitted similar complaints. It wasn't our fight anymore, but I couldn't help but smile. The fallout from Karen's lies was still unraveling. Actions had consequences, maybe not always fast, but eventually. As fall crept into Sedona and the evenings turned cooler, Grandpa and I found ourselves sitting outside more often. No drama, just quiet. One evening, as coyotes called in the distance and the pool lights shimmered over still water, he broke the silence. "You know," he said, "some people get older and wish they had fought back more." "I think we did all right." I nodded, clinked my beer bottle against his, and said, "Here's to fences, cameras, and not taking crap from anyone." We drank to that. And the pool? Still ours. Still private. Still off limits to Karen, wherever she ended up.